You ever seen a man's entire legacy collapse in real time on record? Under oath, and in front of a smirking ex-lover who just tossed a grenade labeled "I was with Stevie J the whole time"? Because what just happened in that courtroom wasn't divorce, it was public execution, love and hip-hop style. Lil Scrappy walked in thinking he was about to settle custody, maybe argue over furniture. Instead, he watched Bambi press the self-destruct button on live drama and say, "I lied to protect him, but not anymore." Boom! Affairs voice notes, secret production meetings, scripted tears, sitting in the front row like a demon in Dior. Stevie J grinning like the Joker with a fresh storyline. What even is real anymore? Was it love? Was it clout? Or was Scrappy just a pawn in the messiest TV chessboard ever created? And y'all, Madev, had a seat at that same damn table. Yeah, we're going there. So grab your popcorn because the tea is boiling, the files are leaking, and the court ain't even ready for what's about to drop next. This isn't just Dramia's scandal warfare. And trust somebody's career is going down with the gavel. When Lil Scrappy stepped into that courtroom, he thought he was walking into a routine hearing. Maybe some legal jargon, maybe a few tears, maybe a dramatic pause or two. But what he walked into was a setup so brutal, so cold, and so calculated, even the judge had to take a second to process it. Bambi didn't come to settle, she came to scorch. Dressed in silence and dripping with vengeance, she wasn't the same woman Scrappy once held down through the love and hip-hop madness. She walked in like she had nothing left to lose, and the moment she sat down, she made sure everyone knew why they were really there. "I have a statement," she said. And just like that, you could feel the oxygen leave the room. Scrappy looked confused at first, like maybe this was another one of Bambi's dramatic speeches, something for the cameras or the blogs. But this wasn't rehearsed. This was raw. "While I was married to Scrappy," she said, "I was also in a relationship with Stevie J." Silence. Not the awkward kind, not the courtroom kind. It's the kind that smacks everyone in the face and leaves a mark. Scrappy didn't flinch, but his eyes said everything. The betrayal, the humiliation, the disbelief was all there. Stevie J, sitting comfortably in the front row like he was watching a rerun of his greatest hits, had the audacity to smirk. He didn't blink, didn't twitch, didn't even pretend to be remorseful. He looked like a man who knew exactly how this would play out, like he had already seen the script. And maybe he had. Because according to Bambi, this wasn't just some affair in the shadows. This was a tour-long project, carefully constructed and executed while the cameras rolled and Scrappy slept on it all. It started during the filming of the spin-off, she explained. "We were talking, venting, building trust. At first, it was just emotional. Then it wasn't. And just like that, she cracked the door open on something bigger. Something way past personal betrayal. She wasn't just confessing to cheating. She was confessing to conspiring. She said Stevie wasn't just her shoulder to cry on. He was her co-director. Together, they mapped out scenes, created conflicts, and sculpted narratives designed to manipulate public perception. Scrappy was cast as the emotionally unavailable husband, the distracted, inconsistent man who just couldn't show up for his wife. Meanwhile, Bambi played the role of the devastated woman who was trying her best to hold her family together. But behind the scenes, the tears were timed, the breakdowns were booked, and the storylines were bought. And then she pulled out the smoking gun. A literal USB. "Everything is here," she told the judge. Messages from Stevie, instructions, voice notes, even text threads with producers. The courtroom froze. Even the bailiff raised an eyebrow. Scrappy didn't say a word, but his grip on the table turned his knuckles white. He looked like a man who had just realized he wasn't living in a marriage, he was living on a set. Bambi kept going. She said Stevie used his connections to influence edits. Claimed certain scenes were reshot after private meetings. That even the therapy sessions, the ones where Scrappy bared his soul, were designed to paint him as the villain. He told me when to cry, she said. He told me what to say. He helped me play the part. It was productional manipulation disguised as reality. And the worst part? It worked because fans bought it. The audience saw Bambi's tears and rallied behind her. They dragged Scrappy for not showing up, not caring, not fighting harder. All the while, he was completely unaware he'd been cast in his own downfall. Then Scrappy stood up, slowly, quietly, looked Bambi dead in the face. "You slept in my bed," he said. "You kissed my daughter. You planned scenes with that man in my house." His voice cracked, but he didn't yell. He didn't need to. Every word hit like a hammer. The judge asked for order, but the courtroom wasn't chaotic. It was just heavy. Everyone could feel it. The weight of what had just been exposed. Then Stevie stood up. Not to apologize. Not to explain. He walked straight to the bench, handed a folder to the judge, and said, "That's Exhibit G, trust me. It makes her USB look like kindergarten homework." Gasps, murmurs, someone in the back audibly whispered, "No way." The judge flipped through the folder. 50 pages, emails, bank transfers, contracts, text messages, allegedly proving not only the affair but a financial scheme tied to storyline. Manipulation, payments from unknown LLCs to Bambi, bonuses tied to specific episodes, scripts showing entire confessionals were pre-written. And at the center of it all, Stevie J's signature. Scrappy looked like he'd been hit by a truck. He leaned over to his lawyer, whispered something, and just nodded. Meanwhile, the judge asked Bambi if she could confirm the contents. She hesitated, then nodded too. It was all true. And just when you thought it couldn't get worse, it did. Because, according to a footnote on page 47 of that same folder, someone else knew. Someone close. Someone family. The court clerk passed a note to the judge. He read it. Then read it again. And that's when he looked up, face tight, and said, "This court will take a short recess." The courtroom didn't move. People were frozen in their seats. Scrappy stood there, blinking slowly, like his entire past 5 years had just been rewritten in real time. The judge got up. Lawyers shuffled papers, but Scrappy just stayed there, hands on the table, staring at the empty seat where Bambi had been. Like he finally realized the real betrayal wasn't just the cheating. It was the performance. The lights, the scripts. The audience. All of it. Asterisk, the courtroom doors opened again, but the energy had shifted. It was no longer just awkward tension or reality TV theatrics. It felt like a funeral for Scrappy's entire life as he knew it. Bambi returned to her seat like she didn't just burn the building down 10 minutes ago. Stevie J sat relaxed, as if he'd already won something. And Scrappy, he didn't walk in. He floated, dazed, like he was sleepwalking through a nightmare. He couldn't wake up from. The judge re-entered, holding the folder Stevie had submitted, flipping to the final page with a grim expression. Then he looked up and said, "We've received a sworn affidavit from a VH1 staff member." The room froze. Not another twist. Not another dagger. But yes, another twist. And this one went straight for the jugular. According to the affidavit, multiple cast members were allegedly instructed to sabotage Scrappy's image in exchange for extended screen time and side deals. It listed names vague at first, but then it landed on one that felt like a betrayal so deep it physically knocked the air out of Scrappy's chest. D. Richardson. Mama D, his own mother. Allegedly present during production meetings where her role was to stir conflict, feed Bambi scripted triggers, and ensure Scrappy's emotional breakdowns were caught on camera. Scrappy turned toward the gallery where his mother sat. "Tell me it's a lie," he said, barely above a whisper. "Tell me you didn't sell me out." Mama D didn't answer. She just looked down, eyes wet but lips sealed. The silence said more than 1,000 words ever could. Scrappy slowly shook his head like something in him had just snapped clean in half. Meanwhile, Bambi sat frozen. Whatever power she held a moment ago, it slipped through her fingers the second Mama D's name hit the air. She looked at Stevie like she hadn't known, like even she had her limits, and now they'd been crossed. But Stevie, he looked amused. Not smug, not loud, just amused. Like all of this was playing out exactly the way he wanted it to. The judge called on the court clerk to play a video labeled Exhibit H. It was a recording from a Zoom production meeting. Blurred faces, clear voices. One person said, "If Bambi can cry by Monday, we'll greenlight her wellness brand." Another voice, eerily calm, said, "Scrappy's unstable arc is working. Let's lean into that." Then a third voice, unmistakably. Stevie J said, "Bambi's got it down. She rehearsed it twice last night. It's going to be Emmy-worthy." The gallery let out a collective gasp. Scrappy didn't even look at the screen. He just closed his eyes. Like maybe if he couldn't see it, it wouldn't be true. The judge asked if the clip was authentic. The VH1 staffer who submitted the affidavit stood up from the back and confirmed it. And then it got worse. A second clip played, shorter but louder in impact. A voice asked, "What if Scrappy flips for real?" And the response, "Let him." Real tears, real clicks. That's when Scrappy stood, not to speak, but to breathe. Because it looked like even that had become a task too heavy. "They watched me break," he muttered, and called it content. He turned to Stevie. "Had me yelling at my wife on national television while you were in her phone telling her what to wear when she cried?" Stevie didn't flinch. "You left the door open, Scrap. I just walked in." The judge slammed his gavel. "Control yourselves." But this was long past control. Scrappy's lawyer stood and filed a formal motion requesting federal investigation into production-level fraud, emotional exploitation, falsified contracts, and financial misconduct. The judge approved the motion on record. What had started as a divorce hearing had now officially entered criminal territory. But just when everyone thought the courtroom couldn't possibly handle more chaos, the court clerk handed the judge a sealed envelope marked Emergency Exhibit I. The judge opened it, skimmed it, and froze. Then he cleared his throat. "We've just received screenshots from Bambi's email account." Another wave of tension hit the room like a slap. The judge continued. One subject line reads, "Scene notes. Stevie X Bambi bedroom confession." Another, "Do we have clearance for Scrappy's breakdown?" And another that reads, and I quote, "If Scrappy threatens to walk, remind him of the bonus." The gallery lost it. Phones were raised. Reporters dashed outside. Even Bambi's face drained of color. She tried to speak, but nothing came out. Scrappy stared at her like she was someone he never met. Like all those years of marriage, kids, drama, love, and loyalty had just been wiped out in 3 emails and a USB. The judge ordered the clerk to secure the email evidence and announced a full review of talent contracts, payment histories, and off-air communications. He looked straight at Bambi and said, "If any of this proves to be part of a financial scheme, you're not just a party in this case, you're a target." Bambi looked like the walls were closing in. She turned to Stevie, maybe for reassurance, maybe for rescue. But Stevie just leaned back and said, "Play stupid games, win primetime." Then, for the first time since this entire scandal erupted, Bambi snapped. "You told me I had no choice. You told me if I didn't play along, I'd be blacklisted. You promised me safety." Stevie laughed, a cruel little chuckle that echoed off the courtroom walls. "I promised you camera time," he said, "and you got it." Security had to step in between them. Scrappy didn't move, didn't speak, just stared. Everything about him screamed heartbreak, but also something more realization. That his life had been mined for entertainment, that his trust had been sold frame by frame, and that even his own mother might have handed the producers the shovel. The judge stood, preparing to adjourn for the day, but not before saying what everyone was already thinking. This court isn't just handling a divorce. It's unraveling an entire production empire built on manipulation, exploitation, and deceit. Scrappy blinked slowly, still not speaking. He didn't need to, 'cause after everything, his silence was louder than any outburst could ever be. Court resumed the next morning with the kind of weight that hangs in the air and crushes every breath. This wasn't just about a marriage anymore. It wasn't about tears on reality TV or petty Instagram clapbacks. This had become a high-stakes unraveling of a media empire built on betrayal, manipulation, and shameless exploitation. Lil Scrappy entered the courtroom with none of the swagger he was known for. The man who once spit bars about loyalty and held his family down now looked like he'd aged 10 years in a single night. He didn't look angry. He looked gutted. Hollow next to him sat his legal team, flipping through files, USBs, printed DMIs, all labeled with tabs like breakdown scene, burned text threads, emotional setups, all proof that his life had been packaged and sold without his permission. And then came the moment no one saw coming. The court clerk approached the bench and whispered something to the judge. He nodded and then leaned into the mic, clearing his throat. This court has just been handed Exhibit K, a private recording from within the VH1 executive offices. The gallery stirred. Exhibit K, the name alone, felt like a bomb waiting to explode. The lights dimmed slightly as the video began playing on the courtroom screen. The timestamp read 3 months before Scrappy and Bambi's divorce filing. The footage was grainy, but the audio was crystal clear. A woman's voice said, "If we want to renew this storyline, we need drama. Real drama." Scrappy's checked. "Out. We need a pivot." Another voice replied, "Let's push the therapy angle. Maybe bring in Stevie again. Get Bambi in a vulnerable space." Then a man's voice entered, calm but smug. "We already got her. She just needs a little more pressure. Offer her brand exposure in exchange for a loyalty flip." The screen went black. The judge raised his brow and asked the clerk if the recording was authenticated. 'Twas, taken from a recovered laptop connected to an internal investigation. And just like that, the dots connected themselves. This wasn't a story gone wrong. It was a business strategy executed to perfection. Bambi wasn't just manipulated. She was recruited. Stevie wasn't a side piece. He was a producer's golden ticket. Scrappy wasn't just heartbroken. He was a financial pawn in a media war that had been orchestrated behind his back while he filmed scenes he thought were real. The judge leaned back, almost stunned, and said what no one expected to hear that day. This court is officially recommending a federal inquiry into VH1 production practices under the grounds of emotional exploitation, financial fraud, and unlawful manipulation of talent contracts. You could have heard a pin drop. Even the bailiff looked shaken. Scrappy looked up slowly, and for the first time, his eyes weren't just sad, they were on fire. He turned to his lawyer and whispered something. The man nodded. Papers were shuffled. Then Scrappy stood. The judge allowed him to address the court. His voice wasn't loud, but it cut through the silence like a blade. "Y'all made me look crazy on national TV. Made me scream at my wife while you texted her the lines. Made me question my worth while y'all were counting views off my breakdowns. I ain't just suing for me. I'm suing for every person you turned into a caricature just to sell ads." Then he sat down. The judge simply nodded and began outlining the formal steps toward a multi-party investigation. But the fallout had already started outside. Blogs were melting down, screenshots from the courtroom went viral. A leaked internal memo from the VH1 office hinted that multiple producers had quietly resigned. A well-known sponsor pulled out within hours, and a press release from a mental health organization condemned the network for weaponizing therapy sessions for entertainment. Meanwhile, Bambi's legal team was scrambling. She looked like a woman on the edge of collapse, the weight of her choices finally crashing into her chest. Whatever protection she thought Stevie would provide, it was gone. he hadn't even looked at her since Exhibit K played because Stevie. He was already on to the next move. A source close to him leaked that he had secured a production deal for a Talal docuseries, exposing the dark underbelly of reality TV. The twist: he wouldn't just be narrating it, he'd be releasing never-before-seen footage, including bonus scenes that never aired, scenes where cast members begged producers to stop pushing mental health storylines for fake drama. And guess who's featured in most of them? Scrappy. Scrappy at his lowest. Scrappy begging Bambi to cut cameras. Scrappy breaking down after a phone call with his daughter that producers allegedly told him to recreate for more impact. And now Scrappy was done being quiet. He went live on Instagram. No filter, just dim light and raw honesty. "Ain't about love anymore," he said. "It's about how they used my name, my family, my pain, and sold it to y'all like entertainment. I stayed loyal to people who were writing scripts while I cried. And mama, I love you, but you broke something in me I might never fix." The comments poured in. Thousands. Fans switching sides. Influencers calling for a boycott. VH1's official page flooded with snake emojis and accusations. But Scrappy wasn't done, because within 24 hours of that live, his legal team filed a massive civil lawsuit against VH1. Mona Scott Young and multiple unnamed executives under a newly drafted motion titled the Exploitation of Persona and Psychological Harm. The case made headlines not just in hip-hop blogs, but mainstream news. And what was Mona's response? Silence. Until a voice note leaked. Her voice cold and calculated, saying Scrappy was always replaceable. This is what happens when talent starts thinking they're bigger than the brand. That only fueled the fire. Scrappy's team responded by announcing a new independent platform to expose the truth behind reality TV, featuring exclusive interviews, footage, and legal updates. The title: The Price of Reality. The narration: not Scrappy, Stevie J, because in the end, even the puppet master couldn't escape the mess he helped create. And now the industry is shook. Contracts are being reviewed. Cast members are lawyering up, and Scrappy, he might have lost his marriage, his image, and his peace. But in the ashes, he found the one thing none of them saw coming: the truth. And now it's payback time. So now we ask, was any of this ever real, or was it all one big performance dressed up as reality? Is Lil Scrappy the tragic hero, or the first real victim of a system that feeds off public humiliation? Did Bambi fall into a trap, or was she the one setting it all along? And Stevie J, mastermind or monster? One thing's for sure: the truth is messier than the storylines we were fed. If this shook you the way it shook us, don't just scroll past. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Whose side are you really on? Scrappy's, Bambi's, or none of the above? Hit that like button if your jaw dropped more than once. Smash that subscribe so you never miss the next shocking twist, because Exhibit L might already be loading. And don't forget to turn on notifications, because in this world of glam and betrayal, the next episode could break the internet. Again, this is where truth sounds stranger than fiction, and receipts speak louder than regrets. Stay tuned, stay messy, and stay ready, because the game isn't over. In fact, it's only just begun.